What are the top technology trends to expect in 2025, and what are my predictions? That's what I want to talk about today. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney. For the last 20 years, I've drafted and negotiated a variety of technology-related contracts and litigated failed digital transformations in courts across the country. What do I expect to see in the digital transformation ERP software space in 2025? Well, I think first and foremost, it's a continuation of a trend that we've seen in 2024, and that is a continued increase in the amount of ERP implementation failures and digital transformation failures. It's no secret that the industry is riddled with failure after failure. Depending on the study, depending on how you define success, anywhere from 75 to 85% of all digital transformations fail. And I think that number will continue to rise, and we will see more marquee lawsuits in 2025. And the reason for that really, I think, is twofold. One, there is an enormous pressure that's being put in place by ERP vendors on their customers to really move to the cloud. And I think what that does is it creates a false sense of urgency in the customer base. They're really not ready to do that necessarily. They're being forced to do that because of artificial deadlines and pressure. The reason behind that, I think, is really more revenue generation for the vendor than it is in the interest of the consumer. But I think what ends up happening is you've got a mass of customers that are being forced and pushed to the cloud when they otherwise wouldn't do that. I think the cloud solutions sometimes are half-baked. They're not the same as really a lift and shift from the on-premise version. The complexity of the implementation of the digital transformation, I think, is generally misrepresented by these vendors. It's presented as something that's not a big deal when in reality it is. I think these unreasonable expectations with respect to the complexity of the transition to the cloud really sets clients up for failure. I think the mass migration to the cloud creates scenarios where there's a shortage of experienced consultants in any particular industry. And so what that creates is a scenario where instead of getting the A team, you get the C team, and your marquee consultants that you're trying to utilize for your transformation are being taken off of your project to be utilized on maybe a more profitable project. And the reality is that ERP vendors are notorious for using smaller dollar training or smaller dollar implementations and training projects for their newer or inexperienced consultants. All of this, I think, is going to continue to contribute to an increase in the failure rate of digital transformations in 2025. One of the other trends in 2025 that I expect to see really is the continued utilization, the continued rise in a commercial context of artificial intelligence. And I mean, I think, really, if you look at 2023, 2024, the buzz around artificial intelligence has really been in the generative AI space, and it's really been more in kind of a consumer-oriented space. But I think really artificial intelligence is going to come into its own. Artificial intelligence is going to be incorporated in a more robust way into these large ERP software projects or software products. And I think really there's going to be a bigger utilization of artificial intelligence. And I think it is going to be utilized in both the ERP context on a standalone basis. And this is something I'm seeing in my practice, particularly in the healthcare space. For whatever reason, we represent a variety of different hospitals, and we are continually seeing them utilize different pieces of artificial intelligence functionality for different functions in the hospital. And I think that's probably a good thing. But I do think that in 2025, you're going to see more utilization of artificial intelligence. And I think it really becomes critical as a consumer, if you're going to be adopting artificial intelligence, to have a well thought out strategy for the utilization of that technology. One of the other trends that I am going to expect to see in 2025 is really kind of this best of breed multi-cloud environment in the context of an ERP implementation. And I think certainly for decades, ERP has been kind of a one-stop shop or one-stop solution. It's often billed as a silver bullet, and I think a lot of customers are kind of getting wise to the fact that maybe it isn't necessarily so. And I think it's going to be really what we're going to see is more of a utilization of best of breed solutions. So you're going to have, the underpinnings of your ERP provider, and you're going to have, maybe all your financials be provided by one software vendor, but then for kind of, more niche pieces of functionality, CRM, or warehouse management, whatever it is, I think you're going to see more customers start to utilize these multi-cloud environments, both in the implementation process and then going forward for the life cycle of that product or that product mix. And I think that's probably a good thing. I think it's going to minimize maybe some of the monopoly, the vendor lock-in that some of these large ERP vendors have. But I also think it creates certain risks, particularly with the integration and management of these disparate systems. How are they going to talk to each other? All these different vendors need to be able to cooperate with respect to the integration. Are there going to be fees for integration? But I do think that we're going to continue to see sort of this best of breed model going forward into 2025. One of the other things that I expect to see as a trend in 2025 really is the utilization of software platforms or platforms as a service. And what I mean by this really is you've got a software platform that is going to have these kind of different modules that you can utilize. There's going to be third-party products that are going to be applicable or compatible with that software platform. So you're not getting essentially pre-configured apps from one vendor, but you're getting sort of kind of like a platform that you're able to utilize, kind of an app store environment where you can pick and choose different types of modules and different pieces of functionality from different vendors, third parties. And I think one of the examples of this is really something like Salesforce.com, where you've got content or applications that are being produced by maybe the user base or third parties or developers, all for utilization within that environment. I think it creates a real competitive play to kind of the old traditional ERP providers. It's a little bit different, and I think there's some value and some utilization in connection with utilizing software platforms and platforms as a service. So let me know in the comments what you think of these predictions, if you think that this is spot on, or if you think there's some other industry trend that I've missed. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions about anything that we've talked about in this video, please feel free to reach out to us at taflaw.com. Again, we'd love to talk to you. Technology attorney for the last 20 years. I've drafted and what are the top 20? Jesus, okay. I can't sit down.